Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, romantics. I'm here with New York Times bestselling author RaeAnne Thayne to talk about her new holiday romance, Snow-Kissed. Welcome to the show, RaeAnne.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. I was looking through, as I do for everyone, I'll go on their website and just kind of familiarize myself with the author and what they've been up to lately. And I saw on there that it looks like, at least in part, you have your mom to thank for setting you down this path of becoming an author. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, that's sort of twofold in the fact that she was a huge reader, and so me and my sisters are all huge readers. We
Yeah.
absolutely adore reading, and we actually have our own little sister book club. Our mom is gone now,
Oh,
but she passed
I
that on
love
to
that.
us. So it started there, like I think it does with most authors. We start by loving the written word and loving stories, and then I was very involved in drama and debate when I was in high school, and my mother felt like I was a little bit too one-dimensional. She wanted me to stretch my wings, and so I had a room in my schedule one semester or one quarter for an optional class, and she suggested journalism. She thought I might like that, and I took that journalism class. Loved it. Loved writing. Loved working for the school newspaper. I was the editor my senior year for the school newspaper, and I went on to get a degree in journalism and worked for 10 years in a daily newspaper in journalism. And but I still sort of had the dream of writing a romance novel because I loved them for so many years. That's what I sort of started out reading and just really adored that genre. And I wanted to tell that kind of story. And so I was on maternity leave with our daughter. It's been 35 more plus years now, and I decided to start my first book and didn't know what I was doing, didn't have a class, I didn't know about RWA at all. I didn't find that out about till about 3 years into my writing, but I just read books about how to do it and tried my hand at it. And it took me 5 years, but it was 30 years ago this month, in fact, probably this week, that I got the call that's selling my first book.
No, that's exciting. A 30-year career in this business, that is really something you just don't know these days. 30 years at
Right.
any job really is amazing. But with this business, it has its many ups and downs, as
Right.
you know. And so, yeah, I love hearing about pivotal moments like that where it just it's almost like a light switch or light switch flip or just like a slow turn, like a slow
Right.
rotation where your life just slowly changes into, something that you didn't expect. And how cool that your mom felt like you needed something extra in your
Right.
life to, I guess make you more three-dimensional. She said,
Well, and I
I
didn't
don't
even know
know.
how to type because I'd never taken a typing
Yeah.
class. And so she said, well, take a summer. You had to have it. I think that was a prerequisite for this journalism class. She said, well,
Okay.
learn how to do it over the summer. So I took a summer school, learned how to type, and that totally changed my life because I'm a pretty
Wow.
fast typist now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yes. Well, that's great. Well, before we get into Snowkissed, is there anything else that you would like to talk to us about yourself or about your writing journey? Just anything that you're comfortable with.
Uh, you know, Not specifically. I would just say I have loved every minute of these 30 years of being published. There's no thrill as exciting as seeing your book in a store, opening that first box of author copies, seeing your book on a list or something like that. It's wonderful. The most heartwarming part about it, though, is the contact I have with readers, which when I started out, we didn't have email. I mean, I was probably in it for about 5 years before email came along, really. And so, we didn't get that constant interaction with our
Yeah.
readers like we have now. And I think that has really changed the way that I approach the work. I now think about my readers when I'm sitting down to write and think about what are they looking for? What do they need right now? What can I deliver to them with this particular story that might lift them and help them feel a little better about the world right now that we're in.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, that's great. But you hear so often that authors don't think about the readers whenever they get into writing their book because, it's their book while they're writing it. And so they kind of avoid those outside outside influences. So I think that's really interesting that you have the reader foremost in your mind as you sit down to write that story. That's amazing.
I
That's
do.
very,
In fact, my wallpaper on my laptop is a saying that I heard many years ago when I first started writing, and it says, "I may not change the world, but I can change someone's afternoon." And so
oh,
that's exactly what I try to do
yeah,
when I sit down to
yeah,
write. I want to lift. I want to be a light in a sometimes very dark world. And that's what I hope people get out of my stories. They're about hope,
yeah.
they're about healing, they're about, people learning how to find joy even when life is hard.
Yeah, well, speaking of light and joy and all of that that you just mentioned there, Snowkissed did that for me. This was a wonderful book. I hope people go out and nab it up. It's on pre-order right now, I think, but
No, it's
go out
out
and
now.
oh,
It
is it
came out
out
on
now?
October 7th. Yes. So it's
October
been out for a
7th.
couple of
Okay.
weeks.
Okay, great. Well, go out and nab it in any format that you want. I always like to have the author talk about the book itself because I'm terrified of spoilers. So, if you don't mind, what can you tell us about Holly and Ryan's story?
Sure. So this is a story about a single mom who's really just trying to get through the holiday season. She is a florist. She's been divorced for 2 years. Her ex basically left her for another woman. They have a new child. She also has a special needs daughter, and her ex left her and her special needs daughter, basically has abandoned both of them, but is
Mhm.
coming back to town for his sister's wedding, which Holly, my heroine, is doing the flowers for, and her daughter Lydia is a flower girl for, because she does have a good relationship with his family, even though he was a
Yeah.
jerk to her. So she's like, not wanting to deal with this holiday season and not wanting to deal with, having to see him again, her ex. And so when this very handsome helicopter pilot happens to walk into her life because he's in town helping his sister, she's like, "Oh, you would be the perfect date for me to take to this wedding so that nobody pities me." And she had told his family that she was bringing someone, and now she's like, "I gotta find somebody." So anyway, Ryan is that plus one, and he's in town. He has his own troubled past. He had a pretty hard childhood from, he had a father who was in the military who was very rigid, and he calls him the colonel because that's sort of how he felt, like he was one of his, one of his underlings. And
Yeah.
his mother died when he was young, and so he um, doesn't want anything to do with his dad, who lives in this same town. Now he sort of has to reconcile himself to the fact that he's going to have family for the holidays, even though he's not crazy about that. So their two worlds collide, and they manage to help each other through their various difficulties and find their happy ending, which I love. Happy endings.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this one here, I think like everybody, first of all, I do love a plus one story. I always think those are a lot of fun. In this novel, as you mentioned, Holly has a special needs child, Lydia, and probably like everybody else who has read this story already, I fell in love with her. And I was curious if you had to do any particular type of research to bring authenticity to that character,
I
or not.
did.
Okay.
I did, but I've also had 28 years of research because we have a son not with Down syndrome, but he has cerebral palsy. And throughout his life, all of his best friends, or many of his best friends, have Down syndrome. So we're very
Okay.
close to many people that have Down syndrome, and we've seen them, from preschool on. He's been in classes with them, and we've known their families and talked to the families about some of the things that they deal with. And so I'm very familiar with the disability community. Our son is in a different, situation because he's severely disabled and requires total care, non-mobile, non-verbal, etc. But that has given me an appreciation for moms who are tiger moms. All moms, are mama bears for their kids, but moms of special needs kids, that's a new level, because you know that you are their advocate and you are the one that has to be there to protect them from the world, but also to give them their best chance at a great life in the world. And there's so much added pressure and responsibility on a parent in that situation. And so I sort of drew on my own experience of my friends that have kids with Down syndrome, and then all the people in our population that we know
Oh,
and love.
I love that tiger mom. I have not heard that term before, so I love that. That's great. Is this a story? I don't, forgive me, I don't know the answer to this question as far as if you have written about special needs children before, or is this the first time you've done it? And if so, is this a story that you've really wanted to write for a very long time?
It comes, this one comes really from the heart, but I have written stories about that. That's my life. I mean, I tell
Mm,
people I'm his mom first, and then I'm a writer second because,
yeah.
he requires total care, and so a huge portion of my life is caregiving. And so that, of course, that's going to filter in because as writers, all of our life experiences, we filter that in
Absolutely.
into our
Yeah.
stories. And so I have written
Mhm.
previous stories. I think I've had children with hearing issues. I've had a few with brain injuries. That seems to be one because I'm familiar with the brain injury population again. That's one I tend to go back to. But in this particular case, Lydia was really special to me, just this 5-year-old girl. And really, what I wanted to show with her story is that she's a child first. Forget about the disability, focus on the
Mhm.
child. And I think
Yeah.
so often, especially with Downs, where there's a distinctive, somewhat distinctive appearance, and you kind of know when you see someone that they're dealing with that situation, you forget that they're a kid first, and they love Christmas, and they love Santa Claus, and they love,
Yeah.
opening presents, and then it's the same custody situations that a parent of a child without disabilities has to deal with because she has to learn how to share this child that she's so protective and loving of with this ex-husband who's really trying, even though he was a jerk and didn't step
Yeah.
up to his responsibility. He really wants to be a dad, the best dad he can be. And really his new wife is pushing him more than I think he is pushing himself, but he's trying. And so she can't
Mhm.
deprive her child of the opportunity to have that relationship with her dad because he's always going to be her dad, whether, he's a perfect dad or
Right.
not, he's always her dad. And how can she, cut off that support and love for her daughter when even if she doesn't like it, when her daughter really does need that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I thought that that was a very, from my perspective, a unique dynamic that you created that the ex, or I'm sorry, that the second wife or the current wife was pushing him to be more involved in his child's life, and I thought that was great because I know people like that, and
Right.
you don't always see that. There's normally friction there and that sort of thing. But one of the things I really loved was Ryan's relationship with Lydia. And there were a couple of moments when they went to the town market or holiday market that I could actually feel my throat just clenching with emotion. It was so sweet, so sweet. That
He
was
was
great.
he was exactly what both of them needed, just a protector, and
Yeah.
he just loved her from the minute he met her because it was impossible not to. She's so
Yes.
open-hearted and so loving, which is has always been our experience, with that again that
Yeah.
population that they just their hearts are so pure and so loving and joyful. And that's what Lydia was. And he didn't realize how much he needed that. And maybe Holly didn't realize how much she needed somebody to just accept her daughter as she was and love her
Yeah.
as she was because her dad didn't really he couldn't handle the disability part, which unfortunately is very common
Yeah.
in the is situation when you have a child with disabilities. There's a very high
Mhm.
divorce rate of parents that are dealing with special needs children. And so, it's not an uncommon situation to have to let one parent who maybe
Yeah.
isn't totally comfortable with the situation have custody, and you just have to sort of accept
Mm.
accept the situation and try to do your best. And so that's
Yeah.
what all of them are doing in this story. And really, I like to write books. There is conflict in the story, but it's really just about people trying to figure out normal things in life, how to deal with what situations we all have to go through. That the dedication of the book is that it's for anyone who's missing someone at Christmas time because
Yeah.
we all have to miss someone. Holly is going to be without her daughter at Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, and she's never been without her in her 5 years. And so many separated and divorced parents have to juggle that, and there's a
Yeah.
loss there, of those memories, but it doesn't mean you can't have a great Christmas. You can't have a joyful time. You have a great life, even if it's not
Mhm.
exactly what you planned. It can still be a wonderful, beautiful life.
Yeah, and you gave Holly a wonderful support system, and I love that she was this small business entrepreneur with her florist shop, and that she was really, really good at it, but she was juggling all of those things that single moms who have their own business have to juggle with, and it was all very believable. And yes, and Ryan came in at the right time for them, and it was the connection between the whole group there was great. Yeah,
Oh,
you,
good.
you
I'm
nailed
glad.
that. Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I had fun writing this book. And funnily enough, I've written 78 books, and this was my first
Wow.
fake dating book. I've never written one
Oh,
in all those years. I've never had
wow.
that trope. It just never has quite worked for what I'm doing. So it was really fun. I had fun with it. It's one I love to read. I don't know why I've
Yeah,
never used it in a story, but it worked really well in this particular
it did.
situation.
It absolutely did. All right. Well, one of the things that I like to dive into, and you might have actually covered this a little bit in our previous discussion or previous question there, but is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's typically what I call that second beating heart of the story that flows beneath the lover's story.
Mhm.
Um, what undercurrent do you think is flowing beneath Holly and Ryan's story?
I do think in this one it is about how you learn how to make the best of your life. You need to learn how to make the best of your life and figure out, if there's a time to forgive. Ryan had to forgive his dad for the mistakes his dad made. His
Yeah.
dad is trying to be a good father. All these people are trying to do their best and they're not perfect and none of us are, but sometimes you have to give people grace if they're really doing their best.
Yeah.
And that's the situation that these people were in. I always say that my core story, and I think all of my books, is that we're all here to learn how to take care of each other. That's the
Mm,
reason that we're here. And I like to show my characters learning that, because you can't really be open to love and happiness and joy if you close yourself off. You're
hmm.
not letting, you're closing the door on all these possibilities in your life. And so I think that's kind of the undercurrent of all of my stories. It is in
Yeah.
this as well. And again, this one is about a little about forgiveness and a little about maybe forgiving yourself too, which is an important part of it.
Yeah. I've heard one other author talk about the core story, and I'm curious, did you figure out what your core story is, or did you have other people say, "Oh, I noticed this, popping up in your stories often." Do you recall?
Funny story about that. I did, and the way I found it out, my husband and I did the NPR conversation thing. I can't remember what it's called, but they came to our community with their little van, and you go in there and you talk to each other, and then
Oh,
record that, and it goes in the Library of Congress. The name's going to come to me as soon as I'm done
nice.
talking to you. I know, but we decided to do that, and as he was talking about my career and juggling my career with the caregiving that is obviously a huge part of my life. And it was in that conversation that we were both in tears, and I realized that's my core story, is that that's why we're all here,
Ah,
because there's so many and I think a lot of my books I have caregivers because like this is the third book in my Shelter Spring series. And in the previous books, it's more about caring for elderly people and caring for siblings and things like that. But in this one, it's definitely, caregiving her
okay.
daughter and giving her daughter the best chance. But yeah,
Uh,
that was during that conversation. And from then
oh
on, I
my
was
gosh,
like, that is
that's great.
exactly right. That's what it comes out in every one of my books somehow.
That's great. One of these days I'm going to figure out what mine is. I want somebody just to tell me because
I
I
know that
can't
would
figure it out.
that would be great. That would be great.
Um, well, just to flip gears just a little bit here, we were talking about tropes a little bit earlier, and you'd mentioned fake dating. Can you think of any other tropes that readers can look forward to while reading this story?
Sure. Well, it's single mom. It's cozy Christmas, small town. It is a wounded hero because he's a military hero who was in a hard landing crash basically, and probably will have to end his career. No giveaways because he's dealing with that
Yeah.
throughout the whole book. That this military career that he
Mm,
loves is probably coming to an end because his knee is not healing as it should be, and he can't fly a helicopter in the
right.
Navy with that condition, which I did research a lot to find out, you can have that. If you don't meet that restriction in the military, it doesn't mean you can't ever fly a helicopter. You just can't fly it in the military. Other people are
Mm,
fine with it. It's just, in the military, you can't do it. So anyway, and so yeah, that was just kind of kind of the research that I did for that particular story, but yeah, kind of the storyline there.
Okay, no, great. And then I always like to ask, have you read a recent romance? It doesn't matter what genre or subgenre, lately that you really loved and would recommend?
I haven't recently read romance, a lot of romance. I actually I step back. I have Mary Balogh. I love her books. I love
Oh,
her Remember When. I just finished that one. And so
okay.
that was the most recent romance. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and I listen to a lot of like historical fiction, not necessarily romance, and a lot of women's
Yeah.
fiction, women's historical fiction. And so that's more of what I've listened to in the last week or two, but prior to that I had just finished Mary Ballogh's most recent
Yeah,
book.
no, that's great. I have women's fiction on here every once in a while, and I just had spoke with Susan Wiggs about Wayward Girls, and
Oh,
that was, if
yes.
you haven't read that one, that
Yes.
one's a really great story. I really love that one too.
I love Susan. She's fantastic.
Um, besides reading, what is your favorite thing to do when you're not writing?
I like to walk my little dog. I live in the mountains of Utah and we have a
Ah,
lot of beautiful trails and places that we can go. And she's just a sweet little half poodle and half, a few other things, but she's
yeah.
just perfect size, perfect cuddle dog. I love doing that. I like to bead. That started with one of my series where I wrote a book set in a bead store. I didn't know really anything about beading, and so I started researching it and fell in love with making earrings and I make beaded bookmarks. I love doing that
Oh,
for my
nice.
readers. That's lots of fun. Being with my family. I like to watch a lot of travel videos. I love to travel when I get the chance, but again,
Mm,
because of our son, I don't get the
yeah.
opportunity as often as I'd like. But
Okay.
that's one thing I love.
Those are all great. Those are great. And then my last actual interview question here is, can you share a moment in your writing career that made you stop and think like, wow, I can't believe this is happening?
Sure. It would have been 12 years ago, when I hit the New York Times for the first time.
Ah,
So I never imagined ever doing that. I never thought I mean, I was writing romances for Harlequin and, they
yeah.
would never hit the New York Times, but they kind of pushed me to start writing single title for them. And they really put a lot of energy and effort behind my books. And the week that I hit the New York Times was the week that my dad died after 3 weeks after my mom died, or 5 weeks after my mom died. And so I really felt like they were there, helping make that happen.
Yeah.
I was very sad that they weren't there for me to call because, they would have been the
Yeah.
first ones. My mom especially. Sorry, I'm getting teary.
Yeah.
My mom
Oh,
especially would have been so
mhm.
thrilled about that, but
Yeah.
it was unbelievable
Well,
to hit
I'm
the New York
sure she
Times.
knew it was going to happen for you at some point,
Right.
and she was cheering you on anyway.
And
So,
every
yeah.
single time since then, I think I've hit maybe 17 times since then. And every single
Oh,
time it's
great.
just like, oh my word. I can't believe this is my life.
That's good to hear, though. I mean, having never been on the New York Times list, I would think that, after say like 8 or 9 times, that it would just be like, oh, I hit the New York Times, great, kind of thing. But it's nice to hear that it's exciting every single time, that there you've got that accomplishment and that, yeah, I don't know,
It's
it's
increasingly hard, as
yeah,
the market is changing completely, and it's very, very difficult to get on the New York Times list anymore. And so it's still a joy and a wonder, and even more unbelievable the times that I do hit it.
that's great. That's great. All right. Well, before we go, can you give us a hint of what's coming up next?
Sure. So I've just finished my book for next summer. It's called The Rainy Day Bookstore, a bookshop, sorry, The Rainy Day Bookshop. And it's a story about a mom and a daughter trying to kind of figure out their relationship after kind of some years of estrangement between them. And I had a great time writing that. And now I'm working on the next book in the Shelter Springs series, which is Hannah, Holly's twin sister, her story. And I'm
Great.
having lots of fun writing that one.
Yeah. She seemed a bit more feisty than Holly.
Yes, she's very feisty, but she has a backstory that
Okay.
explains why she's so feisty.
Okay, good, good, good. Well, I saw the cover of the bookshop and I love the cover. And it sounded like a great story too. So we'll look
I,
forward to that one.
I'm excited. I'm excited for that one.
Great, great. All right, folks. When this episode airs, as we've already established, Snowkissed is already out. So, be sure and grab your copy. You can check out RaeAnne's website at raeannethayne.com. RaeAnne, what social media platform are you most active on, would you say?
I would say kind of a toss up between Facebook and Instagram. Facebook mostly, but I basically post everything from Facebook onto Instagram too. So you
Okay.
can find me at both places.
All right, excellent. And would you say the handle is at
It's
RaeAnne Thayne or
yeah, it's author RaeAnne Thayne, I think, but if you type in RaeAnne Thayne, I think you'll
it'll
find
come
me.
up? Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. All right. Well, RaeAnne, thank you so much for joining me. This was such a pleasure to chat with you, to get to know you, and to also chat with you about this amazing story. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a joy.
You bet. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at tracydevlyn.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.